Welcome back to another episode of the Proshot Hockey Show. Tyler Raines with you as always, with Cameron Capobianco, and we have a lot, and I mean a lot to talk about since the last time we did the hockey show. And I want to say first and foremost, Cap, this is an exciting time for hockey.
We have a lot to dive into, number one, and an exciting if you're a Canadian fan. If you could be a Canadian fan right now, this is an exciting time for the NHL. We're going to get into that in just a bit.
Yeah, wrong jersey. You get what I mean.
It's okay. At least you're not wearing a Toronto FC jersey talking about hockey.
So there are quite a few things to talk about. First and foremost, and I want to start off by a little bit of breaking news in the MHL, or if you've been following along these last couple of weeks, you'll know what I'm about to talk to you about. Corey Baker, the head coach and general manager of the Miramichi Timberwolves, stepping aside after winning an MHL title and a semifinals appearance in the Centennial Cup. And I think when I first saw that, when I found that out, I was in shock because he's such a fan favorite and he had just won a league title in Miramichi. I just didn't know what to think.
I honestly, when you told me the news that Corey Baker stepped down, I didn't even know what to think. I was shocked. I mean, he took the third place team of the Miramichi Timberwolves, took him not only to an MHL title, but then took him to the Centennial Cup semifinals, ultimately losing to the Collingwood Blues. That's a great storied ride for Miramichi to go all the way to the semifinals, win the MHL title, and you think that he would come back for another year, but we obviously don't know the reason behind it. If we did, we probably would know. We probably have to talk about it, but it's just shocking to hear that he has stepped down as Miramichi head coach and general manager, excuse me.
And he was named head coach and general manager in the 22-23 season, so it didn't seem like it was that long ago, but it seemed like for Miramichi fans, it was a lifetime ago. And he's such a fan favorite. I mean, he's a guy who was born and raised in Miramichi, went to play pro in Europe. He is a President's Cup champion in the QMJHL. There's just a lot about him that Miramichi fans have learned to adore over the years. And I can only imagine, as somebody who is a follower of the league and is a fan of Junior A, how Miramichi Timberwolves fans are feeling. Because, again, like you mentioned, he took a third place Miramichi Timberwolves team in the North Division, going up against the favorite West Kent Steamers, who were projected to win the league, beat them, beat the Edmonton Blizzard, went on to go and face the Summerside Western Capitals and beat them, and they made it as far as they did. Now, I don't know what the reasoning is that he stepped aside, but it's, even though he wasn't coaching the team for that long, there's already a lifetime of memories there for the fans.
Absolutely. And like I said, like you just said, being the underdog and taking this third place Miramichi Timberwolves all the way again to a national championship, a national Centennial Cup semifinals. You know, a lot of the guys did not think, a lot of the guys did not think maybe that this team would be able to go that far. And he turned that team around and said, we're going to prove everybody wrong. And look what they did in that Centennial Cup run too. Obviously, you're going up against a heavy favorite like Collingwood, but to go up against the Calgary Canucks, the Oakville Blades, who were the hosts of this past Centennial Cup, and then going up against the Melfort Mustangs, you really could not have made a better storied run for this team.
I agree, and I mean, it really is, when you think about it this way, and I think in hindsight, people are going to kind of look back at this and say, hey, that was really a Cinderella run, because that's the final year of Corey Baker, final year of Ludovic Dufour, so many overagers on that team that are graduating, and they went out with a bang. And that's just a fiery type of personality that Corey Baker has. I mean, he's always up there yelling, and I think most of us Rapids fans can attest to that from the times that Miramichi has played in our barn. He's always up there, and he's just being that passionate, fiery coach. And he's a hell of a coach.
But I just love... Sorry, if I could just chip in here. I love when these former pro players that played either overseas in Europe, the NHL, the AHL, the ECHL even, or even at the junior level, like former OJHL players, MHL players, QMJHL, OHL, WHL, all come back and say, you know what, I want to take the next generation of talent, take them under my wing, and kind of like shape them into these players that they can become. And we've seen that throughout the years. We can name a few. Jamie Storr, a former National League Hockey League goalie for the Los Angeles Kings, taking charge of the Oakville Blades. You have another guy, like Dale Mitchell of the Leamington Flyers, the newest kids on the block, and look what he did with that team in the OJHL. Nobody expected them to go that far in the OJHL playoffs, ultimately losing in the conference final to the Collingwood Blues. You had also, I'm going to throw in some names from the OHL. James Richmond is probably one of the most notable guys on that list, the coach of the Mississauga Steelheads.
Jeff Krzakis is another one. Jeff Krzakis is another one too. He played in the NHL for years and came back and decided, hey, I want to coach and get this generation up to this next level. Another one, Jeff Cowan of the Grand Falls Rapids. Played for the Atlanta Thrashers, the Vancouver Canucks. There's so many teams that he played for, the LA Kings. And the experience that he brought back with him is, you won't get that anywhere else. You know what I mean? Like, it's so incredible to see these guys that, like you said, they played pro, now they're ready to get back to the next level.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, the list goes on and on, Tyler. Like, there's no other way that we could put it. Like, there's so many players, even just players now. I want to go up to that level. Like, you know what? Maybe pro's not the way I want to go, but there's never that step of, you know what? Maybe coaching's not a bad option either. And there's so many guys who I feel like have gone from like OHL players, OJHL, have gone instead to the level of coaching, whether it's junior A, junior, ETHL, AAA, like you name it. The list could go on.
No, and I agree. And I mean, it's again, it just goes to show that the future of hockey, especially in Canada, is so bright. And I'm really excited to see where it goes. And I think Corey Baker is a huge part of that, especially in Miramichi. Speaking of the future is bright in Canada, the Memorial Cup happened last night. And if you haven't seen it already, the host Saginaw Spirit took down the London Knights with 22 seconds left to play. Josh Bloom wins the Spirit their first Memorial Cup championship and the first CHL team, the first American CHL team since 2008, the Spokane Chiefs, to win the Memorial Cup.
Let's not also mention the first American OHL team. I almost said OJHL for some reason. But the first American OHL team to win the Memorial Cup. And just right out of the gates, like, I before we get into the start to finish, because I don't think anybody really expected Saginaw. I said it best. Saginaw, I didn't think was going to win it. And we said in our predictions, we all thought they were going to lose to Moose Jaw right off the bat. Yep. They beat Moose Jaw. Not once, but twice.
We wrote them off. We wrote them off. And I think in our last episode as well, we talked about that. We were just like, Saginaw's just kind of there because of the hosts. Boy, I cannot stress enough how happy I was that we were wrong. Because if anybody deserved to win and to be there, it was them. They put up a hard fight in the OHL playoffs. London took them down, and they got their sweet revenge.
And what a better way to write the story of winning the Memorial Cup, because you had Josh Bloom, who was originally a Saginaw player, gets traded to North Bay. I think it's North Bay, I believe, and then his rights get traded again from Buffalo to Vancouver when he was drafted in the NHL. And then he gets traded back, he hits free agency. I remember them saying on the broadcast, chooses to go back to Saginaw. And what does he do? Scores the game-winning goal in a Memorial Cup final. You cannot write that any better.
And you look at how special that moment is. I was watching the interview last night with Braden Hache that they were doing on TSN. Julia Teixeira was interviewing him, and he said, you know what? Everybody expected us to be 0-3. Nobody took us seriously, and look at where we are now. That's a testament to how much that group cares about each other and how much they were in it for not just themselves, right? Braden Hache is a guy who, over the years, as I got to watch him play in Kingston and then eventually now Saginaw, he's a guy who's just extremely passionate. And I mean, that Saginaw team's full of players like that. I mean, you got guys like Josh Bloom and Owen Beck and Andrew Oak, Michael Misa, Zane Perek, like the list goes on and on and on. But I think passion is what fueled them. Passion and determination is what got them past Moose Jaw, Drummondville, who, by the way, had a really disappointing performance. We'll talk about that another day. And ultimately London.
Absolutely, yeah. You could not. I mean, everybody had London as the heavy favorite to go into the Memorial Cup, win the final. I didn't even think we all thought it was gonna be. You and I at least thought it was gonna be Moose Jaw and the London Knights going at it for the Memorial Cup. But nobody predicted to be an all OHL final. Nobody predicted to be Saginaw in there. It was insane. Like you said, the passion, the heart. These guys were there to play for that trophy and to win it, and they won it. But going back to that London Knights team, with guys like Easton Cowan on that team, Michael Simpson, who stood his ground in that game, London really relied on him a lot. He stepped up when the time was right, and you know what? If he wasn't in net, I'm going to say it right now with the way that team was playing, I was rooting for London the whole way in that game. I'm going to be honest with you. But it could have been maybe even a bigger blowout than we would have expected for Saginaw to win the Memorial Cup. Michael Simpson stood his ground and played phenomenal hockey. Phenomenal goaltending.
Oh, and that he did. And I want to bring up another player as well who was extremely classy about... Even though Saginaw won, he was extremely classy about the game, and he was grateful to have played Saginaw, and that was Max McHugh. He came out and said after the game, this was an amazing opportunity. I'll never forget what the City of London has done for me, and congratulations to Saginaw on their first title. Max McHugh is another one of those guys who leaves his heart on his sleeve, right? He's just fueled by passion. And the fact that he came out there and he said, hey, yeah, this was amazing and they deserve to win, that just shows a lot about the character of the London Knights and how classy they really are. Everybody views them as, hey, yeah, they're the villains of the OHL. It's because they're a good team, but you really have to think they've developed into amazing young people, great hockey players, and overall just very classy individuals. And that's something that the London Knights are extremely famous for, and something they pride themselves on is how classy that organization is. So good on them.
That organization, honestly, I'd still, if we had to put them in between the rankings again of the Memorial Cup team that did win and the 04-05 London Knights, I'd still probably put them at a mere second for the run they had regardless. I still do believe that despite them not winning the Memorial Cup, they did win an OHL championship. They did take out Saginaw originally. They had a great playoff run too. But I really do believe that this team was the second best London Knights team since that 04-05 London Knights team. Again, that we said, I believe, in the first episode, was the team of, I think, the best team in OHL history.
And that's it, right? Like, I don't think that anybody's going to be able to top that 04-05 team, but this team came pretty close. And I mean, it's not even just the caliber or the star power that they had. It's the fact that they went a good chunk of the playoffs as the underdogs. Everybody thought, they're going to lose to Saginaw. They're going to lose to whoever. They went in as the underdogs, and they came out on top. And that's exactly where they ended up. OHL champs. Easton Cowan won MVP. But ultimately, Saginaw gets their revenge, wins the Memorial Cup, and this is the second year in a row. I just want to point this out. This is the second year in a row that the host team has won the Memorial Cup. Last year was the St. John Sea Dogs, and this year the Saginaw Spirit.
Yes, and actually, too, I want to mention, sticking on the topic of, before we jump off, a little fun fact for this Memorial Cup. Two former Oakville Blades coaching staff and also front-end staff won the Memorial Cup for the Saginaw Spirit. You have Garrett Rutledge, a former coach of the Blades from that 2018-2019 team that won the Buckland Cup, now an assistant coach for the Saginaw Spirit. And then the GTHL scout, reigns for the Saginaw Spirit, Jordan Sellinger, who's now the director of hockey operations for the Collingwood Blues. Fun fact, also won another national championship there with the Centennial Cup and then a Buckland Cup with the Collingwood Blues as well. You know, like we said earlier on, a lot of these guys are moving up in the rankings and everything to go coaching or be a part of the front end staff. It's great to see it. The future of hockey in Canada is very bright. And this is really a good sign too. Like two former OJHL coaches who worked a lot with young talent moving their way up and working with now from junior A straight up to junior with Saginaw and Garrett Rutledge is phenomenal to hear.
And speaking of working with talent and working with a lot of young players in the Ontario Hockey League, I want to talk a little bit about Mr. MVP, the Memorial Cup. And he falls into this category a little bit because he's worked so well with the Saginaw staff and he's fit in so well ever since being traded from Peterborough. I'm talking about Owen Beck. And if you haven't heard about who he is, you're going to want to Google him. I've had the pleasure of having him on the show more than once and got to know him over the years in Mississauga when he was playing here. There are so many good things to say about him. 33rd overall, basically a first-round pick. He was the first pick in the second round by the Montreal Canadiens. And to say that he had himself a tournament, I think would be a pretty decent understatement. 5 points, 4 goals, and 1 assist. Yes, 4 goals, 1 assist in 5 games to win tournament MVP.
And how many? And how many of those goals came in the final?
2. He had 2 goals in that game.
The 2 opening goals.
That right there, you kind of got the sense that he was going to go off in this tournament, and I think he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder. They all did. But I feel like especially Owen, because last year he was an OHL champion with the Peterborough Petes, got close to the Memorial Cup but couldn't win. This year, he gets a shot at redemption. He's going to make the most of it. And we saw that. He was like a lightning bolt mixed with the bullet train. In this, like he was speedy quick, popped goals left and right, made plays that were NHL caliber. And the fact that he was able to score 2 goals against a London team who is so good and so solid on the back end with Michael Simpson, is something else.
Absolutely. And I'm going to bring up, too, like you said, NHL caliber. I got to watch him play preseason hockey at Scotiabank Arena or ACC, whatever you want to call it, or Canada Center.
It's always going to be the ACC for me.
Oh, absolutely, me too. I'm still going to remember it as their Canada Center. But no, just going on the topic of him, I got to watch him play. I had the pleasure of watching him play preseason hockey at the arena against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Preseason, but to see how he played, how he skated, how he shot was so good. I honestly thought, like I said in the last episode, I honestly thought that year he was going to crack the NHL roster for the Montreal Canadiens or even play at the AHL level. So it was weird that he didn't, but at the same time, seeing him come back down to the OHL, playing with Peterborough, getting traded to Saginaw, I feel like next year is going to be the year where I honestly want to see him play at the NHL. I want to see him play with the Montreal Canadiens. I want to see him, even if he doesn't play at the AHL level, I honestly think this guy has the chance to make Montreal probably a better team than they already are with Juraj Slafkovsky, Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki. He adds probably to that depth more skill, a good shot, and he can be a great, reliable asset in my eyes for this Montreal Canadiens side.
Well, and you think about it this way too, right? And I think a lot of people overlook him, right? For Habs fans, you know what you're getting, but for the rest of the league, you think, oh, he's a second-round pick, he's not going to be that special. This is a guy who, in 55 games this year, not even a full season, keep in mind, had 81 points. Okay? 81 points in 55 games. Think about that for a minute. First off, just think about that for a minute. 57 games, sorry. This is a guy who can perform at the OHL level. We've seen that done and dusted. The preseason game that you were talking about, he had a lot of good looks. And I think he was one of the last cuts in Montreal Canadiens training camp, if I'm not mistaken. I think Eric Engels was saying that last year
I'm gonna say
before
this one, add
it
this one
started.
too. When you say he had good luck, great, like I said, great skating, great passing. The passes were right on the tape of the sticks and everything. He almost had a goal in that game too. It was just he was in the right spot. He was in the slot. Just went right by him, I believe.
And
It went either under his stick or by him. It was phenomenal. He had a great pass to Uri Slavkovsky. Was saved. He knows where his guys are gonna be before before they are even where they are. He knows where they're gonna be.
And for Habs fans who don't quite know what you're getting, I would recommend looking up the footage of what he can do. His IQ is on point. He is a sniper, loves to get right into that spot close to the net, is a pass machine. He can make passes out of absolutely nothing. He reminds me, honestly, of a young Anze Kopitar in the sense that he's very creative and he's one of the most underrated players in the world. And I know a lot of people are going to look at that and be like, oh, but they don't play the same. No. Their play styles aren't identical, but they're very, very similar if you watch the way that they play. And call me crazy, I think Owen Beck is going to be their franchise centerman. Nick Suzuki is a guy, but I think that Owen Beck is a very undervalued player, and I think that he's going to be their next franchise guy.
I could see that too, honestly. But for right now, I do see that he is going. If he's not the franchise centerman, he's definitely going to be like I said, an asset to this team. Like you said, centerman. I feel like too he plays good. Like he's a great centerman. We've seen him win draws in Mississauga. You know, he is great on those. But also too, I feel he can play the wing as well, which is really good to see.
Yes, he can, and that's something that I was fortunate enough to see in Mississauga is, especially in his rookie year, the guy won over 500 faceoffs in his rookie year as a second line center. You think about that for a minute, right? This year alone, and I'm pulling the stats here too, 627 faceoff wins through the course of those 55 games.
Yeah, that's nuts to think about. That is nuts.
He only took 1,000 draws this season. So you think about that for a minute. 672. What percentage is it? That's over 80%. That's over 80% of the faceoffs that he took, he won.
That reminds me of almost like a John Tavares kind of guy as well. Like just think about it, all those face-off wins, you know. And I always say this too, and this is what I love, like the two of Canada's national sports, hockey and lacrosse. And I'm not saying this because of Beck, but I'm saying this because of John Tavares. And we've seen so many guys go over, convert. But what helps them also improve on the face-off too, if a lot of hockey players go from hockey to lacrosse in the summer, how low they can get. Because in lacrosse, you have to get very, very low on those face-offs, battle for it. If you watch John Tavares play, just watch him win a face-off. How low he gets is like a lacrosse kind of stance. He'll get low, get his stick down, and battle for it. And that's what makes him so, win most of the face-offs that we have seen Reigns either on the television, wherever, we've seen him win. Most
Another
of those
thing that this guy does really well, too.
We're going to get into that in just a bit. Mr. Connor McDavid.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean,
I'm going to say that right now. Hold on, I'm going to say this right now. I want to see that in a Leaf jersey still. I still would like to see that in a Leaf jersey.
Don't we all?
I could, I'll get my bank card out ready and be like, give me it.
Just
give me it.
Open up the wallet. It's time. It's time.
My wallet would throw up.
When the Leafs make a pitch to McDavid, I know we're getting off topic, but when the Leafs make a pitch to McDavid when he hits free agency, you're going to go down to Scotiabank and be like, take my wallet and take everything I have. Just sign here.
Take my house, for God's sake.
Hell, I mean, I probably would do the same thing, though. Who wouldn't want to see him? But
okay, but
no, but I mean,
get off topic. Let's go back on the track.
But
of where we were.
You're absolutely right, and I think being a multi-sport athlete like that, especially, well, and I think John Tavares had it pretty good as well because his uncle, also conveniently named John Tavares, is the GOAT of lacrosse. So he taught him a lot and made him better on the face-offs and really taught him a bunch of his skills. But being a multi-sport athlete really helps. And especially if you want to focus on one. Let's say like you're playing baseball and you're also playing hockey, and you want to focus on hockey. That fluidity, for lack of a better word, is it's a good thing to have because you have that talent, and it also teaches you skills that you didn't know you could have. If you catch my drift.
No, I get what you're saying. Absolutely. What I want to add to that is, you know, going back off the topic or going back on topic to like Owen Beck again. We're gonna get into with John Tavares because it kind of ties into our next topic, which is gonna be about the Leafs and what we want to see going into this offseason wish list with
Mm-hmm.
the stuff they have already added. We'll get into that, but just going back on the topic of Owen Beck, I just again what he has gone through, going from Mississauga to Peterborough, then going now to Saginaw. Almost, you got to think that this was a well-deserved kind of thing for him and the Saginaw Spirit because we said it with Josh Bloom just right off the topic, right when we started this, right when we started talking about this Memorial Cup. It was well-deserved for a kid who also too in Mississauga, I believe, reigns when we talk about the awards. I believe it was the Scholastic Award he won, if I'm not mistaken, for the OHL. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and it's actually it's good that you mentioned that because that's a very important point to bring up as well. We talked about our skills, right? We talked about the skills and how intangibles outside the game can really help you. You mentioning that is a very good thing because your hockey IQ is a lot, and I mean a lot, based off of your book smarts and your academic prowess, should I say? That's why OHL players, they sign them to deals that are to do with their education because they want to further their education, number one, but they also want to make them into better players. And there was a study that happened a couple of years ago that if you're a good student, it really, really helps you in the game of hockey because then you're using those smarts that you would use and those instincts that you would use in the classroom and applying that to a game setting. So that's a huge, huge point that I forgot to bring up, and good on you for bringing that up as well. He did win Scholastic Player of the Year as well in his rookie year, and I think that's part of what makes him such a deadly player.
I was trying to bring it up because I know in that rookie year he did win a big award. He was very keen, and I believe we talked with him about it just a bit as well prior when we used to interview him post game or even on an episode you had him with. He did touch on his education a bit, if I can recall. I do remember, even if it was before recording, I do recall he did touch on his education, say how important it is, and a lot of these players did too. I've had the pleasure of chatting with hockey players just off recordings or anything that talk about how important the education is while also managing to play hockey as well.
When we were talking and that reminds me of the interview with Jack Ricketts a little while ago during COVID. He mentioned how important your education is when it comes to the game, it's almost as important as putting your skates on. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have a good IQ off the ice, you're not going to be an effective player on the ice because you can have all the necessary tools, but if you're not applying yourself, then it's not really going to help you. And I think that's something that a lot of players we're starting to see nowadays. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of players are going NCAA, because they get to further their education, they get that knowledge, and they get to play hockey at the same time. I see it. But the CHL is also trying to do something where you're a good student, you have good habits, you're a good player on the ice.
And I feel like both sides of the pond do have good intentions for it. I know the CHL doing their thing, NCAA doing their thing as well with the guys going to the US. First of all, coming to the USHL too. Some of the guys go down there first, and then will work their way up as well to get to the NCAA level. I know we've seen it prior before. It's not even a bad thing too, because a lot of these guys also get looked at by the NHL level as well, whether they're at the NCAA level playing for Wisconsin, Michigan. I'm just naming teams off with the big names. Obviously Cole Caulfield played for Wisconsin, Adam Fantilli, Michigan. Luke Hughes, Michigan. A lot. I believe actually two of the Hughes brothers played for Michigan. If I'm not
Hey,
mistaken. I think
Boston
Quinn also
University,
played for Michigan.
Jack Eichel,
Boston
Boston
University, Jack
University, right?
Eichel.
Like
Yep.
I see what you're saying, absolutely, and I think there's advantages to both, but I think as we see the game maturing, and as we see the game getting younger, you start to realize that education's more important, right? And it's not just for the fact that, hey, if I can't become a hockey player, I need a fallback. It's as for your professional development and for your personal development, education's important.
When you look at it too, the OUA level too is not even a bad route because a lot of the guys too, if they end up at the OUA, they also sometimes will end up in the system of the NHL teams. You know, whether it's starting out at the ECHL level, playing for, I don't know, we've seen it before happen. I believe Kyle Bowler's played a couple games from TMU, played a couple games in the ECHL level, and then is continuing to work his way up. Like I'm just naming off examples. Like it's not a bad system because
you're absolutely right. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say it was the OUA is not even a bad level because again gets you up to the ECHL level and potentially if that even works out better, they look at you there too and say maybe we can bring you up to the AHL level first and see where you are maybe and then split the gap between okay, do we want to send you down just one more time to the ECHL or do we want to just keep you here and then you work your game up and then we put you up in the NHL?
And you look at, and I want to use Logan Thompson as an example as well. The goaltender for the Vegas Golden Knights played in Brandon for the Wheat Kings for all 4 years of his junior career. Started playing in the ECHL, played for Adirondack, played for South Carolina, dabbled a little bit in the AHL with the Binghamton Devils. And then Vegas gave him a call and they were just like, how would you like to have a chance with us and to prove yourself, to bring yourself into the NHL? He said, absolutely, I'll take it. And he ran with it. That's just another testament to how good you can be, even if you go through university. That's just it. Education's important. Now, enough about the book education nonsense.
We just jumped right out of it like, not enough about this.
Yeah, enough about this.
We talked enough about school. School's almost done. It's June.
Gah,
school's almost done.
Books. Gah.
Books can be closed finally.
We graduated from college. We're done. Gah. No. but in all honesty, like education's important. Just like the next segment of the show is also important. If you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, if you haven't heard by now, number one, you've been living under a rock, and number two, you need to get yourself a new phone because it's probably operating on iOS 7. Craig Berube,
probably still working on the iPhone 5.
There we go. Craig Berube was named the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And why is this important? Because number one, he's a Stanley Cup champion. Number two, he played for the Leafs in 91-92. And number three, he's a no BS, come to work to show up and play your best or you're going to get benched attitude. What are your thoughts on that? Because I never got to ask you when he initially got hired, what did you think of the hire?
I love it. I to sum it up, I love the hiring. I really do think he's a guy who understands this organization. He worked with not really a young core in St. Louis. He took a team that wasn't even in the Stanley Cup playoff picture, number one, when he was hired as the interim head coach for St. Louis. And look what happened. He took him there in 2019, and look what happened with St. Louis. Stanley Cup champions that year. He like you said right off the bat, he doesn't take the no excuse policy. He doesn't want to hear. He wants you to come to work. He wants you to show up. He wants you to play your heart out. He wants to tell you. He gets his guys in a mindset that, you know what, there's nobody better than you right now. You go out there and you show them why you are one of the best players that are on the ice. And I feel like working with a guy like Austin Matthews, with a guy like Craig Berube, excuse me, I said Prupe. I don't know why I said that. But working for a coach like Kim would be a big, big turning point for this man's career. He's already a great player, number one. But I feel like with the assets he had in St. Louis and also what he can do with the young talent of the young core, he will take this team to a next level kind of playing.
And see, one thing, and I keep coming back to this, and I saw it for weeks about the contrast between Sheldon Keefe and Craig Berube. In the 24/7 series with St. Louis, you saw how Berube's getting everybody fired up. He's like, taking it very seriously. And then Sheldon Keefe, Game 7 rolls around in Boston. Yeah, just go have fun with this. It's two very different styles of coaching.
You don't talk like that.
It's two very different styles of coaching. And I think the Leafs are going to benefit from Berube giving them the kick in the ass that they needed, because he's going to hold his players accountable. And that's something that Sheldon Keefe, as good, I cannot say anything bad about Sheldon Keefe. He's a great regular season coach, but holding his players accountable is not one of his strong suits.
No, it's like, this is how I look at it this way too. I'm going to change the subject just a bit. Well, not change the subject, but go to another coaching standpoint. You look at Toronto FC. They were dead last for a couple years with Bob Bradley at the helm of it. Last year, they sacked Bob Bradley. And there was really, you saw it all over the place. There was no way that they were going to come back from this at the time. They take in Terry Dunfield, the interim head coach, who's still working with TFC right now as we speak. But then they go out and say, you know what? Who do we bring in that's great with the players, that kind of knows some of the guys from international time? They call in John Herdman from the Canadian men's national team to take over the realm. And already, right off the bat, you see the differences. He's working with the team. He's getting them fired up. He's telling them, you know what? Don't play your heart out and just go out and win. He doesn't want the losses. He wants the wins, and he always holds his guys accountable. He always praises these guys as well. It's great to see that a similar version of John Herdman from the soccer world is Craig Berube for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He is that guy who will work with the team, will work for them, listen to what they have to say, and say, okay, this might not work, but let's try it out. If it doesn't, okay, now it's my turn.
Exactly, and that's exactly what... And I think over the years, that's something that Toronto's really been missing in sports, is that kind of gutless, forget about the excuses, we want results sort of coach. That's what Berube is. That's what Herdman is. That's what the Blue Jays need, which that's a whole other conversation, and I'm not even going to get into that. But it's the fact that the Leafs are finally getting a coach that's going to hold his players accountable.
The last coach, I think we both know who we're thinking of as the last coach to really hold these players accountable. And no, it's not. And no, it's not Randy Carlyle. Number one, it's not Randy Carlyle.
Nope.
It's Pat Quinn. It's Pat Quinn.
Okay, yeah, no, that's not at all who I thought you were gonna say. I thought you were gonna bring up the other guy.
Oh, no, not Ron Wilson either.
No. The one whose name I will not speak.
We've been through too many dark times. We've been through too many dark times, as Leafs Nation has seen. But no, I'm talking about Pat Quinn. That is probably the last coach from an era of hockey that would hold his players accountable, that would get his players fired up. He was working with great guys. Look at the team he had: Matt Sundin, Darcy Tucker, Ty Domi, Gary Roberts, too, at the helm. Ed Belfour, who we shouldn't really mention because if Reeser hears this now, he's probably going to go nuts.
But you see, Pat Quinn and Pat Burns were the last two Leafs coaches that held their players accountable. And since then, we've had good coaches, but none of them... We're in an era now in the NHL where we're babying players and we're catering to, hey, I don't like this. Okay, yeah, that's no problem. You know what we need to go back to in the NHL? If a player comes to you and says, oh, I don't like him on the team, you say, tough luck. Play, or you'll play somewhere else.
I would honestly say, are you on the same line with them?
Yeah.
And if they say no, I'd be like, there's your answer.
That's it.
You're not, then suck it up. You're not, you're playing on a different line than the guy you don't like.
And it's one thing, like, not all teams are going to have players that get along, but if you're making $10 million a year and you're still complaining and you're not trying your hardest, I think the coach has every right to go after you and say, hey, you're not putting in your effort, you're on the bench. And if they complain about that and say, oh, he's bullying me, boo-hoo, cry me a river. You're making $10 million in the National Hockey League. Play. and play well. No excuses. Craig Berube, Mr. No Excuses, fits well. Ties into the next portion. Our Maple Leafs off-season wish list. I wish I could do the thing over the screen where it just like, it appears in like a rainbow thing. Anyways.
Like the rainbow thing where like the SpongeBob episode was like imagination.
Exactly. So our Maple Leafs off-season wish list. I'll go ahead and start the 3 things that I think I would love to see the Leafs do. Number 1, trade Marner or buy out John Tavares. I mean, it's difficult for me to say because Marner's a great player, but I think given over the past year to 2 years, it wasn't even just this playoff run, I'm not overly enthused with his attitude. And he's one of those guys that just, it is what it is if we lose, whatever. I know he loves the game. I know he loves being a Leaf, but his time in Toronto's got to come to an end. John Tavares, he's bogging us down. He's 34 years old. He's got 1 year left on his contract. Buy him out. If you can't trade him, buy him out. It's going to cost you nothing to do it. Buy him out. Because he's slowing down. He's still an effective point player. He's not good on the faceoffs anymore. He's not fast. That's about it. He's good at putting up points. Good at making passes. But to me, John Tavares is a great player and always has been. But again, like Marner, his time in Toronto's got to come to an end sooner or later. And I think this is it. The next one. He was that good this season. I would like to see them re-sign Max Domi.
That was on my wish list too. So.
Heart and soul. He loves this team, and he was meant to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. You can see that from the way he plays. He leaves his heart out there, leaves everything he has on the ice, and goes out there and does what Max Domi does, and that's just be a beast and a tormentor and a Brad Marchand type player who does not care and will run you over in order to get the goals. We saw that in the playoffs. This is a guy who I really want to see the Leafs bring back, and I'll be extremely sad and disappointed if they don't. And the final thing on my Maple Leafs offseason wish list, trade or sign a right-handed defenseman to play on that top pairing with Morgan Rielly. We've seen that TJ Brody might be on his way out. Ilya Lyubushkin might be on his way out. Joel Edmondson might be on his way out. There are a lot of players who might be leaving, and the Leafs need to capitalize on this. Shea Theodore, even though he's a left-handed defenseman, can play the right side. He's a guy that they can go after.
Absolutely. I like that wish list a lot, and I'm going to jump into mine just right off the bat because one of the things you just said is obviously on my wish list, and it goes in with another player. I really liked both of these players, and I did start talks with one of them, so I'm going to start off the bat with what? It's re-sign Max Domi, but also, too, with that re-sign, I want to see Tyler Bertuzzi back as well in the blue and white. I do want to say I liked both of them. They added great depth to our team as well. Max Domi, not only playing a great goal-scoring kind of game, also kind of playing like, okay, you're going after my guy? No, this isn't going to fly. We saw that in the playoffs when he took down Brad Marchand as well. He did not take too kindly to that when he was going after his players. And that's what I like to see. I love the attitude on this guy. It reminds me a lot of his dad because his dad did not take that either. Oh. So that would be on my wish list.
And you look at Tyler Bertuzzi, too. I mean, he's a lot like his uncle in the sense that he's a strong player and he's a power forward. And that's what we need. That's what the Leafs need is a guy like him. I would love to see him come back, even if it's a 2-year deal, something that's short term. I want to see Bertuzzi back especially, too. So I'm with you there.
Absolutely. And so my number 2 is get a new goalie. We need a new starting goalie. Here's why. I like Joseph Woll. Joseph Woll is great, and I feel like he could be a great backup. I do think in time, maybe if he starts getting into this kind of sense, then maybe he can be good enough to maybe crack some starting time as well. Ilya Samsonov, I don't get me wrong, he was a good goalie. I know he had a lot with mental health and everything. I'm not trying to bring him I'm not trying to say that he wasn't a bad goalie because at times he could stand his ground and be great reliable goalie, but I do not think the Leafs should continue on with him at the starting point for this team. I do see them moving on from Samsonov potentially this year, and maybe they go after some good goalies. I know the draft just is maybe on the terms of coming around. Maybe they could get a good goalie to develop as well into the system at the start of the draft, but I don't see them going back on the route with Ilya Samsonov at the helm.
No, and I mean, nor should they. I mean, he's not a fit. You saw that with Jonas Enroth. You saw that with Peter Mrazek. Now you're seeing it with Ilya Samsonov. He's just not a fit anymore. And it is what it is. Can't really do much about it. Joseph Woll, love the kid. And I think he's got great potential. He's got bones.
We saw what he did in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We did see what he did against Boston. He was phenomenal. When we needed him to stand up, he came in and he made the clutch saves that we needed and stood his ground. He got us a couple wins as well that were very caliber to get us to where we were to another Game 7. I hate saying that word, Game 7. I hate that word. It's still bitter in my mouth.
The only problem with Joseph Woll is he's got bones that are crunchier than a bag of chips. That's his only problem, is that he's very injury prone. And he's going to be a good backup. Or a 1B, but I don't think he's going to be the starter. I would love to see him be it, but with him being injury prone, I don't know.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that, with that being said, like, he's going to start every game. I do see them, like, maybe at one point, okay, like we have the back-to-backs. Instead of them going, we've seen the NHL guys go back-to-back in net. Like, we've seen it before. But I do see him maybe when they have a back-to-back game, okay, let's say whoever they get also they don't want to risk starting that day. Okay, Joseph, you're going in net now. So, and he will be that guy who will be a great fit still for this team as well. He's been here for a while. He's been here, I believe he's been here since they won the 2018 Calder Cup when he was with the Toronto Marlies. He was in that system, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was a second round pick in 2016. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been here for a while. He is a really good, reliable goal. He has shown it through the years now. I know we've seen him a couple times last year, Reigns. It wasn't the best, but to see that improvement during the offseason and to see what he's done now is really, really amazing to see what he has done and how much commitment he has to this team. So I would like to see Joseph Woll still stay in this roster, be a backup, what have you. My number one thing would be, like you said, the defense. I do want to see them get defense. That's actually on my number 4. I was going to say that, but that was also added in. So my number one thing that I want to see is more depth in this lineup and maybe a little bit more physicality as well. Maybe bring it back to old school. I know the game's changing, but is old school hockey really that bad? Maybe getting a little bit of physicality and depth back into the lineups.
I can see what you're saying.
I mean,
because
here's what, and if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
With Ryan Reeves, you really thought that was going to be the guy. I really liked him a bit. I did. I liked the physicality that he brought a bit. But after a while, it started to be like, okay, he started to get like, he wasn't bringing that physicality that we thought he was going to bring when we first signed him. That attitude. So I really could want to see maybe them move on from him as well at the bottom 6. Bring in like a couple more guys like low end who can get physical in the play. Max Domi, like I said, he's not playing like his dad, whereas that was really physical. He's more playing like a Darcy Tucker kind of player, getting the points, but also playing a very physical game. So maybe add some more additions like Max Domi kind of players as well. So getting more depth into the bottom 6, getting a little bit back to the physicality side. I know, again, like I said, the game's changing. It's more points. It's more scoring. I like that. The last team to really do it, again, for this Toronto Maple Leafs side to really go the distance and make it out of the first round is that 03-04 team. I hate to say those years again. But look at the guys again they had. The physicality from Ty Domi and Darcy Tucker, the points from Mats Sundin, they blended it all into one team and made it really into a great team that almost, again, made a run for it. Not the way they wanted it. Even you can look back at 92-93 team of the Maple Leafs. Look what they had. Is there really that much ask for more depth and more physicality in this team? I really don't think so. Look at Florida. We're going to get into it in just a bit. Look at Florida right now. What they're doing with their team, the depth of it.
What the Leafs need is like a Matthew Rempe or a Jacob Trouba type player that's less dirty and more disciplined, but can
Yes.
still stand
Yes.
their ground and stand up for their veteran players. And that's one thing that I admire about the Rangers is that they got their toughness, they got their superstars, and they still find a way to make a well-rounded team. And it's only a matter of time before they win a Stanley Cup. But that's what the Leafs need, is they need a Matt Rempe / Jacob Trouba type player or players that are still good but can throw the body and, can be physical.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's again like where I'd say it again. I liked Ryan Reeves at the start. I'm just gonna touch on it. We saw what he did against our Bergerac guy when the Leafs played the Canadians. Those two going at it made me think that okay, this is the guy I want. That's gonna add that to our team. And then look what happened later on. It was like okay, now it's starting to get like less physical with him. It's like we got to move on from it. We need the guys like we're gonna be more disciplined. Like we need a Matt Rempe, like you said, a Jacob Trouba on defense as well. Like that could add to the depth of the defense as well. So, so again, two guys who I'm gonna say they move on from this offseason. Again, you mentioned John Tavares, Mitch Marner. I think that's gonna happen as well. But the two guys I definitely think they're gonna move on from, if that's the case, is definitely gonna be a Ryan Reeves and an Ilya Samsonov. Unfortunately.
I hear you there. And as the playoffs rage on, we're now in the Stanley Cup final. And tying into what you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the Florida Panthers have eliminated the New York Rangers, and the Edmonton Oilers made it past the Dallas Stars and shot their way back from the galaxy down to earth and have landed in Florida, where they will face off for hockey's greatest prize, the Stanley Cup.
Notice how also too I just want to touch on this in both the clinching games when Florida won and Edmonton won. Notice how nobody touched their trophies for the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. They all know that curse.
They learned their lesson. It's the trophy curse. You don't touch the Prince of Wales trophy, and you don't touch the Clarence S. Campbell Bowl. That's just you don't touch the trophies. It's superstition. But people were all
it's a superstition, but it's also been proven because
it's bogus.
I believe Florida did touch it last year. Florida did touch it last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Tampa touched it the year that they won the cup. It's bogus. It's a hokey superstition. It's trash. It's not true. I will defend that tooth and nail.
But I want to go back touch on Florida because the Panthers deserved again to be back in the Stanley Cup final. And I honestly thought last year when they were one of the wild card teams, they shot their way back. They shot their way up the rankings. They beat Boston in the first round. Then they beat Toronto in the second round. They beat New York, I believe, in the conference final last year as well. Mm-hmm. So to see them get back, unfortunately, didn't go their way. But the story they had was like almost like a 2022 Montreal Canadiens, where they were fourth in the North Division, and then look where they got all the way up to. So this year to see them kind of go from that wild card team to almost, I believe, first place in the Eastern Conference, they absolutely deserve to be back in this final in my eyes.
First place in the Atlantic Division. And I think they were second place in the Eastern Conference, second or third. But man, this Panthers team. I mean,
but you know what I mean. To see them shoot back up to the
level,
like
it's funny that we mentioned that because I was looking back in an interview with Matthew Tkachuk last year, post game when Vegas eliminated them and won the cup last year. Tkachuk said, "Don't worry, we'll be back," and they're back. They're back. How long will they last? Remains to be seen. But we'll. You know what? With that being said, why don't we share our predictions?
For sure. So I was actually jumping on the fence of what I think's who's gonna win. I was honestly leaning towards Edmonton a bit. I do want a Canadian team to win because I want that curse to be broken finally. I do believe it's been long overdue. I think all Canadian hockey fans can agree that it's been long overdue since Montreal won it back in 92-93. But for my prediction, unfortunately, I was looking back at the rosters now. I do honestly want to maybe say Florida takes it. And the reason I'm looking at it is because the depth lineup of the Florida Panthers compared to the Edmonton Oilers is maybe a better lineup. Yes, there's Connor McDavid, there's Leon Draisaitl, but the depth of their lineup for the Florida Panthers is unreal. You know, you go from Alexander Barkov, Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Reinhart, Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, Anton Lundell, who's been very exceptional in these playoffs as well, has been playing very good. And then you go down to the defense with Eric Ekblad, Brandon Montour, Gustav Forsling, and then the goaltending of Bobrovsky and Stolarz. The depth is there for this team to possibly finally say this is our time to bring the Stanley Cup over to the south side of Florida. And I'm not saying back to Tampa Bay. I'm saying go with the Panthers.
Now, I'm going to get ripped apart for this in the comments, I know, but I've got a hot take. It's scorching. I don't care. Everybody thinks that, oh, Edmonton's a two-line team. McDavid and Draisaitl carry. Well, guess what? Look past it. Look at this roster and tell me that it's a two-line team. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Connor McDavid, and Zach Hyman. Okay? First line. Ryan McLeod, Leon Draisaitl, Corey Perry. That's their second line. Adam Henrique, Evander Kane, and Dylan Holloway on the third line. If that's not depth, I don't know what is. Fourth line, you got Matthias Janmark, Derek Ryan, and Connor Brown. Forward-wise, they are almost just as good as this Florida team. Florida's got more star power with Barkov, Verhaeghe, Reinhart, Tkachuk, and Bennett. But where Edmonton hits them hard is that bottom six and their defense. Evan Bouchard's leading defenseman in points. Matthias Ekholm is a two-way wonder. Darnell Nurse is playing out of his mind these last couple of games. Brett Kulak, who, by the way, is extremely underrated. Like, it's the fact that I even have to justify the fact that Kulak is a top 4 defenseman on this team is ridiculous. 88 hits, or 88 block shots and 77 hits during the regular season, playing on the second line pairing. That right there shows how good of a defensive defenseman he is. Philip Broberg and Cody Ceci, iffy pairing. Not great. Broberg's kind of he's a young defenseman, Cody Ceci, throwaway. The thing that Edmonton struggles with compared to Florida is goaltending. And that is going to be the only thing that I think would be their downfall. But I think you have McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, RNH, Corey Perry. You have all those guys firing on all cylinders. This is going to be a very quick series, which is why, and I know, feel free to call me a clown in the comments. I got the Oilers in 5.
Wow. If I say the Oilers, I'll go Oilers in 7, but here's why. I mean, look at last night's game, what happened, though, too. You have to take into account the shot. They were playing a very good Dallas team that lit them up in shots with 35. But then you look at Edmonton on the other side. They only had 10 shots throughout that entire game.
Well, even still, 10 shots. 10 shots are 10 shots. This team's good. They're God tier. Nobody's beating them. And nobody can tell me otherwise. No one. Not one. You can call me a homer just because I have a Connor McDavid jersey hanging behind me, whatever side that is. Edmonton's winning. And you're not going to convince me otherwise. This team, this Florida team, they're getting too cocky too quickly. That's what's going to be their downfall. The cup is coming back to Canada, and I will write that down. I will double cross my words. I will take that to the grave. Edmonton is winning, and nobody's telling me otherwise.
All right. Well, I hope so. I'm gonna go with. I'm hoping a Canadian team brings it home. I'm not saying I don't. You know what? I'm gonna say Florida. My Panthers. The Panthers in 6. I'm gonna go with that. That's my gut feeling. But I wouldn't mind seeing the cup be brought home to Canada for the first time since the 92-93 season. And because, like I said right off the bat, it's been long overdue. Number one, and number two, we've seen too many Canadian players win. It has been brought across the border, but it's too many Canadian players who have been bringing it home. You do want to see, as a Canadian hockey fan myself, that cup be brought home by a Canadian team for once, finally.
Yeah,
Could it be done though? It all depends. Could it be done because both sides of the spectrum, both sides of the ice have two really good teams going at it for this cup.
is it that easy though? I mean, are they that evenly matched? Because on one side, I see Verhaeghe, Barkov, and Kachuk versus McDavid, Hyman, and Draisaitl. Like, it's not really that far fetched, is it? Like, you know which
But you
side's
really
better.
named, but you really named just three of the star players right there. You start with that that line. Here's the thing: you pretty much named where they could possibly get them is that power play line. But in the depth of the forwards, I really do see Verhaeghe, Barkov, Kachuk, Bennett, Lundell too, going down to the defense of Ekblad and Montour to name a few. The depth is more there for Florida. I really do want to say that Florida could fire on all cylinders, especially too. Bobrovsky, in my eyes, is a better goaltender than Stuart Skinner. I
Okay,
do
that
see guys who could probably take him on, and I'm gonna say just two names that could probably take him on because we've seen this man go at it with players before, and we've seen him stand up for his teammates last year in the playoffs and also early on in the playoffs this year. Matthew Tkachuk will give Corey Perry a run for his money.
yeah, but
I
then he's
I do see
then
because
he's
Matthew Tkachuk is a type of player who takes that A like it's a C and will turn into a captain and put that leadership to where it is. If Corey Perry starts getting under the skin, if Evander Kane starts getting under the skin, here's the thing: Matthew Tkachuk will come in and chime in a few words for those two players.
yeah, but then Matthew Kachuk's gonna answer to Darnell Nurse. You know what I mean? Like, Nurse is no pushover either. And I mean, sure, the Oilers don't have an agitator like Kachuk, but I mean, they've got guys who can stand up for each other. And I mean, not that Florida doesn't, but you don't see Reinhart dropping the gloves. You don't see Verhaeghe dropping the gloves. Like, Nurse will, Kane will, Henrique will. There's some toughness over in Edmonton, man. I'm telling you. Like, and again, people are going to say that I'm an idiot. People are going to say that I'm dumb and that I'm out of my mind and that my hockey takes are trash. Well, guess what? Live with it because it's going to happen. And I'm telling you right now, this series is going to be a mighty quick one. If the Oilers can get everybody on board and can stand up to Matthew Tkachuk and the bullies of Florida, as I should call them. No, they're amazing players, but they're tough, but they're not as good as the Oilers are overall.
See, you say it's a quick one. I'm saying it's going the distance. I'm going to say it's going to go either way. It's going to go. It's going to go 6 or 7. It's going that later round because one of these teams is going to have those games. Cough, cough. Edmonton, like last night in Dallas.
Oh,
Was
here
10
we
shots
go.
on net. With those 10 shots on net. If that's the case, if that's what we're going to see out of that team when Florida comes rolling around, because Florida's learned a lot. Let's not forget. Florida's learned a lot from what happened last year in the Stanley Cup Finals. They know what they're going to be working for.
Have they, though? I mean, they almost blew a 5-1 lead twice to the New York Rangers.
Yeah, that's okay. There's that. they almost blew it again the last time. They almost blew it. It was 2-1. Yes, okay, I get it. Did Edmonton not do the same almost last night too? If I'm not mistaken.
Hey, they may have played like crap, but they still held the lead, and that's the important thing. But either way, I mean, we'll see. And see, this is the kind of thing that I like. If you agree with Cap or if you agree with me, we want to hear it down in the comments. Share it with your friends, and then let's hear what your opinion is, because this is just a classic example of two friends having very different opinions on who's going to win the Stanley Cup. And it's going to be a very interesting series, to say the very, very least. Either way, it's a win for me, to be honest, because Connor McDavid's from my hometown. It's
going to be a good series.
Connor McDavid's from my hometown of Richmond Hill. Ryan Lomberg's from my hometown of Richmond Hill. So, a little bit of bias there, you know what I mean? But no, it's going to be a good series, to say the very least, and I'm really looking forward to the Oilers kicking the crap out of the Panthers and winning the Stanley Cup for the first time since 1990.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the Panthers win it for the first time in franchise history.
We'll see. Anything is possible in a world of uncertainty. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell notification for all future content. Follow us on our social medias down below, and don't forget to follow Cap as well. He is going to be doing a lot of amazing content over the summer with On the Sidelines and with our new show that's coming very, very soon.
We also just released a new episode the other day ahead of a Vancouver FC Valor FC matchup. I actually made a little bit of history because that was the first game in a while that Valor played at home due to the fact that they were renovating their field. So be on the lookout. We released that a lot over the weekend. Be sure to check that out as well as maybe some more interviews coming out very, very soon too.
And there's a lot of content this summer that you're not going to want to miss, so stay tuned to all our social medias and to the YouTube channel. And we'll see you soon for the NHL Draft, which we're going to be doing a live stream on Friday night for round 1. We're going to be recapping all of the picks as they happen. It's going to be a fun time. Come hang out with us. It's going to be real fun. Until then, this has been Tyler Rains along with Cameron Capobianco. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good rest of your week. Be kind to one another, and we'll see you in the next episode.